What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Today, and if it's your first time stopping by, you are most definitely welcome. So today's episode I'm going to be showing us how I made this beautiful corset top. You can call it a corset crop top also, because you can see the length, it's like an half length, so it's not very long. So in my last tutorial I already drafted out the pattern, so in this video, in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing us how I made this top. So guys, if this is something you're interested in, let's get right into the video. So in my last tutorial I already drafted out this corset pattern, and I've gone ahead to cut this out on my Ankara fabric. So guys, when cutting out, make sure to leave half an inch in between the patterns of what you are cutting, so as to leave those allowances for your joining allowances, so as not to shorten your measurement. And these are the front pieces. You can see the cups and the other part. Then for the back piece, you can see I left 1.5 inches as my zipper allowance on the center back. Then I left half inch round the rest of it. So guys, for this side front, for the front piece, I left half inch in between for my joining allowance. Then for the center front, guys, we are going to cut this on fold. You can see it on fold, and I left half inch here, and also at the down part for my joining allowance. Same thing for the cups, I left half an inch round them so as to join, and also the same thing for the base. So these are all the pieces. Then for these pieces, guys, I've gone ahead to cut out lining piece for all of them. I went ahead to cut out lining pieces for all these fabrics you are seeing. So now guys, the first thing I'm going to do is to work on this cup, but before that I'm going to go ahead to gum a gum stay to these pieces. So you can see I've gone ahead to gum a tissue stay. You can go ahead to use your paper gum. So now you can see, and when doing this, just make sure you are also still using the patterns, you know, to indicate which part is facing which part, so as not to mix up the cups. If not, your cup might come out looking flat. So just make sure to arrange them very well before you start joining. So here you can see I'm just arranging my patterns to make sure my cups are, you know, well arranged. And now the next thing I'm going to do is to pad my cups. I'm going to pad all these pieces you are seeing here with this wadding. So instead of using a bra cup, you know, you can use this method. This is very easy and also effective. It is going to give you the result you want. So I've gone ahead to gum my wadding to my pieces, my cup pieces. You can see this is what they look like. So now the first thing I'm going to do is to join the two cups together before joining the base. So I'm just still making sure the patterns, you know, the cups are facing each other correctly. So now this is how I'm going to join it. You can see I'm using my office pins to hold them together, and I'm just going to run a straight stitch in the middle of these two cups you are seeing, like so. So just join this down by half of an inch. Remember, we left 0.5 inches as our joining allowance. So now after joining the two cups, you can see this is what it looks like. The next thing I'm going to do now is to join the base to this. So when joining the base, make sure you align them correctly. You can see what I'm doing, and I'm just going to be joining this down by half of an inch also. So guys, these are what the cups look like. I'm gonna ahead to do the same thing to the other cups. You can see the cups came out very nice. So now guys, it is time to join the cups to the other part of our front pieces. So guys, I went ahead to use a tailor's arm to iron out my cup. You can see this is what a tailor's arm look like. So I went ahead to use that to iron out my cup. So now guys, remember this is the center front and these are the side front. So now I'm going to pin down the center front to the side front. I'm going to use this, I'm going to do this using office pins. So I'll do the same thing to the other side, and I'm just going to run a straight stitch on this. I'm going to sew this down by 1/2 inch, so I'll go ahead to do that now, and I'm going to iron this out. So now guys, I've gone ahead to sew the 3 pieces of the front together, you can see, and I've gone ahead to iron out my seams. So now the next thing now is to create our boning casing. I'm going to use the same fabric to create my boning casing. So guys, my boning casing is about 1 inch, and I went ahead to fold down the edges and iron them, so it won't give me any issue when I'm sewing down. So I'll just place this on the sewing lines on the front piece. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So what I'm going to do is to just sew down on these boning cases. I'm going to sew down on each side of them. You can go ahead to make use of a bias to do this, or you can make use of another fabric, so you can, you know, give your corset top a very beautiful look. So now after doing that guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to place my bonings into my boning casing. So when cutting your boning, make sure you leave about 1 inch, you know, it is not, make sure it is not the same length as the boning casing, so that when you are joining your lining to your main piece, it's not going to give you any issue. Depending on the type of boning you are using, if you are using that Reginine boning, I think you can sew on that, but this is plastic boning. So now guys, the next thing is to, you can't sew on plastic boning. So guys, before placing my boning, I also made use of a lighter, you know, just to smoothen the edges so it won't hurt by the time I put this top on. So now guys, to join our cups to the pieces we've stitched together, I'm just going to start from the center. So make sure the center of your cup is aligned to the center of your front pieces, and I'm just going to make use of office pins to pin this down to the sides. So guys, by the time you do this, if you do this correctly, you're going to see that you won't have any excess on your cups or on the front pieces. So I'll just go ahead to do the same thing for the other parts. So you can see I've gone ahead to use my pins to hold down this cup. So the next thing now is to sew down this cup to these front pieces. I'm going to do this by 1/2 inch. So guys, by the time you finish doing this, you want to make sure you don't have any excess anywhere. If you have excesses guys, just remove your pins and do this again. So this is it. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine now and sew down by 1/2 inch. So now guys, for the back piece, you can remember we have just 2 back pieces for both of our backs. So now I'll just get the middle of this down part. You can see on that waist part, I'm going to get the middle and rule a straight line towards the upper part of this back piece. I'll do the same thing for the other side. I've gotten the middle center of this waist, and just like I did for the front guys, I'm going to go ahead to place my boning casing, and I'm going to sew down on both sides. That's for the back piece. So now guys, you can see I've gone ahead to sew down my cups to the front pieces, and for the back piece also, you can see this is what they look like. I've gone ahead to sew down my boning casings on them. So now the next thing, now I'm going to measure out my zipper allowance. It is 1.5 inches. I'll just measure this out so that I can pin this down, because I want to join this back piece to the front piece. So now guys, every single thing I'm doing for the fabric, I'm also going to be doing the same thing for the lining piece. I don't want to bore you guys with that video. You know, the same thing I did for the cups, joining of the cups to the front pieces, I'm going to do the same thing for the lining piece. So now guys, after placing my front on my back piece like so, the next thing I'm going to do now is to take measurement. So now guys, for this part, take your round chest measurement. Mine is 32 inches and I measured out 16 inches, and the remainder of the allowance I divided it at both sides of this piece. So because your round chest measurement is always different from your bust measurement, so make sure to take your round chest measurement. So now the same thing, I'm going to go ahead to measure out, I'm going to mark out my bust circumference divided by 2. You can see, and the remainder of the allowance I'm going to split it at both ends of this piece. I'm going to go ahead to do the same thing for the underbust. My round underbust is 30 inches divided by 2, that is 15. So I've marked 15 inches, and you can see I have 2 inches as allowance. I'm going to mark 1 inch on one side and 1 inch on the other part. And you can see, guys, I'm just connecting all the measurements together. So now for the waist measurement, my waist circumference is 28 divided by 2. I'm gonna have to mark 14 inches, and I'm just splitting the allowances at the both parts of this piece. So now, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to join this measurement together, and I'm going to sew this down with a straight stitch. So this same thing I've done for the main fabric, I'm going to do the same thing for the lining piece also, and I'll bring this when I'm done. So guys, here it is. I'm gonna head to join both sides, and I'm just going to cut out this excess so it doesn't bulge by the time I'm done with this top. So now I'm just going to turn this inside out, you can see, and I'm going to go ahead to iron down the sides. And before doing that, I'm going to place my bonings into the boning casings on the back. Don't forget to do that, guys, before you join your lining piece. So now, guys, the way we're going to be sewing our lining to our main fabric, there's a method called close-up stitching. So that's what we're going to be doing. So make sure to take your correct measurements on your main fabric and also on your lining. You can see we joined the front and back together for the main fabric. We're going to do the same thing for the lining piece. So you can see the lining piece, these are the lining pieces. I'm just going to do everything I've done for the front piece. I'm going to do it also for the lining pieces. So I'll bring this back when I'm done. So here it is, guys. I'm gonna head to join my back pieces also to the front pieces of the lining. So now it is time to join our lining piece to the main fabric, and you can see what I'm doing. Just arrange your lining piece very well on the main fabric, and starting from the top of, from the I don't want to say top of this top, but you know what I'm talking about. Starting from this top here, I'm going to use my office pins to hold down the lining piece to the main fabric. You can see what I'm doing. So the first part I'm going to be joining is this top part. So I'll sew this down by 1/2 inch because I left 1/2 inch as my joining allowance when I was cutting these pieces out. So I'll just run a straight stitch on this part, start from one center to the end and come back to the center, and start from the center also to the other end. So you can see I've gone ahead to sew down this part. So now the next thing you are going to do is to notch this part you've sewn. This is so that the fabric can relax well by the time you turn it over. So I'm just going to create notches around what I've sewn. So now I'm going to turn this, you can see. So now I'm just going to go ahead to iron this part first before turning over to continue sewing. So I'm going to make sure I iron this very well, and I'm also going to make use of my tailor's arm to iron down my cups. So now, guys, to make sure your lining doesn't show on the front part by the time you finish sewing this top, and the next thing I'm going to do is to make use of a hemming gum to hold down that top part I've sewn. So now what this hemming gum will do is to hold down the lining piece. It's going to join down the lining piece to the main fabric. It's going to make it lay flat, so the lining won't shift, to the extent that it will start showing on the outer parts. I hope you understand what I'm talking about here. So just make use of a hemming gum for this neck part. A hemming gum is like 100 naira, 200 naira. So you can make use of this. You can see the effect is giving. It's just going to make your fabric stay in place. So guys, as you are joining any part of this corset, you want to make sure you are also ironing. This will make your work very neat. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going out. I'm just ironing out all the parts I've sewn. I'm just ironing out all the pieces. So now, guys, once I'm done with that, the next thing now I'm going to do is to turn this again to the other side. I'm going to turn this to the wrong side so that I can sew down the hem of this top. That's the bottom. So I'll just use my pins to hold down the lining piece to the main fabric. So this part, I'm also going to be sewing down this bottom part by 1/2 inch. That's what I left there as my joining allowance. So now guys, for the zipper part, I'm going to sew down one part of the zipper and I won't sew down the other part so that we can use that other part to turn out by the time we are done. So I'm going to sew down this part and I won't sew down the other parts. So here it is guys, I'm gonna add to sew the bottom of my top. Does that make sense? Or the hem of my top, anyone. And I've also gonna add to sew down one part of the zipper allowance part. So now guys, the other part that I didn't sew down, that is what we are going to be using to turn out the old fabric. You can see how I'm just going to go ahead to turn this inside out. So this is what it looks like, and the next thing I'm going to do now is to give this a very good press. I'm going to iron this down very well so it can lay flat, but before that, just make sure you remove all the fabric pieces that is inside so that I don't leave anything inside. So now for this other part guys, for this other zipper part that I didn't sew down, then I'm just going to hold this down. I'm going to pinch this in. You can see what I'm doing, just pinch this in, and I'm going to pinch this in and iron it. So I'm going to show you guys what I mean later. So I'll just pinch this in and I'm going to iron this flat. So guys, remember I said I was going to give this a very good press. That is what I'm doing right now. So you can see I'm just going to iron out all the pieces so that I don't have any excess, you know, on any side of my top. So I'm just going to iron this all around. So now for that other zipper part that I didn't sew down, what I'm going to do is to just hold that part in. So I already showed us how I was going to do that the other time, but I'm going to show us again. So here it is, you can see what I'm doing. Just fold this in. I'm going to iron this down first. You can see what I'm doing. Just iron this carefully. So to close up both mouths or both ends, I'm going to also make use of the hemming gum I used the other time to join down lining to the main fabric. So, and I'm going to iron that down. So guys, I hope you can see what I'm doing. Just iron this down first off. Make sure you press this very flat. You can make use of a steam iron to do this. So now the next thing is to use a hemming gum to join down both ends together. So I'll just put in a hemming gum in between, and you can see I'm going to use my iron to press down on that, so that we can have that end closed. So just like I said earlier, you want to make sure you are ironing your piece all over and all over again. So guys, you can see this is the back piece. You can see looking very fine. So the last thing to do now is to join our zipper to this. So I'm just going to pin this down on one part. I'm going to sew this down by 1.5 inches that I left as my zipper allowance. So this is it. I'm going to sew this down, and after I've sewn this down to one part, I'll do the same thing to the other side. So here it is guys, you can see the corset top looking very fine. I really love the outcome of this corset top. You can see what it looks like. So we've practically come to the end of our tutorial guys. Please don't forget to give this video a big fat thick thumbs up, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'm going to see you all in my next video. If you have any questions for me, please leave your questions down in the comment section. Okay, thank you and see you in the next video. Bye.